So because we're doing this virtually, we've got Tim Liston joining us today. I want to thank Tim for making the time and carving out time to do an hour interview with us and part of his journey. I was 28 years old in 1991 when I moved to Katy, Texas. I moved to Katy, Texas to be the first youth pastor of a brand new church plant. And that's kind of when church planting got into my blood. And I remember we used to get together, Tim, I'm sure you remember these things. We used to get together as the kind of like the Houston area-wide minister alliance from way back in the day. And I remember hearing you tell some stories about your church plant in Pearland. And I remember just thinking, man, I don't know if I'm going to do that one day, but that's going to be pretty cool. So I used to listen to all your stories pretty intently. You may or may not have known that.
Did my stories steer you toward church planting, or?
Well, let's just stick to the script today, and we'll save that for another time. So anyway, Tim started New Hope Church in Pearland, Texas. Pearland is south of Houston proper, and you went through a rocky time. You had to relaunch a few things, and so the church now is a good sized, large church. You've got several campuses. So I'm going to let you take it from there, and why don't you just tell us about your journey and your plan. Now, I know that you shared this at one of our ThinkNEXT conferences, but gosh, that was probably almost 8 years ago.
Really?
But you planted in 1989, if I've got my dates right. But so go ahead and tell us your story and about your journey and some of the bumps in the roads that you went along the way.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. Good to be here. And every time I get to talk to church planters, either individually or in a group, I have a lot of love for church planters because they are crazy. Church planters are crazy first and foremost, and but that's a good thing, because I always tell people that it takes crazy people to change the world. So you need some crazy in your blood to start a church, and I know, Greg, that you have that as well. But we did start in 1989. You're correct about that date. Made a lot of mistakes along the way. When we began with no core group. We had a few families from some area churches that came together with us and agreed to help us for about 6 weeks. And a couple of those families ended up staying with us, which really made a huge difference for us. But, this was 32 years ago. And as you know, Greg, there wasn't a whole lot of church planting material out there, not a whole lot of resources. I don't know that there were any conferences, no groups like Nexus that I knew of at the time.
Yeah, plus Pearland back in '89 was just emerging out of a farm community, wasn't it?
Yeah, big time. And so it was a small town. This was right after the oil bust, and so foreclosures everywhere. The year before that, Houston was a murder capital of the United States. And so a lot of reasons not to start a church. I guess a lot of reasons to start a church, because the area was in need, and so we moved to town, and with a little bit of support, the organization back in the day was CEDA, the Southeast Texas Evangelizing Association. There really wasn't a support group as far as like Nexus. You guys help each other out and all that. And I don't mean to talk negatively about CEDA, but they gave you a check is what they did, and then backed off, and it was kind of sink or swim. But the way that we got started was we did telemarketing back, and some of your younger guys who are watching right now may not know what telemarketing is, especially now that you have the setting on your phone, silence unknown callers, the best setting there is on an iPhone now. But we made calls to 10,000 homes, and this was me and the volunteers from area churches. Made 10,000 calls, got 1,000 people on the mailing list. 100 people showed up for the first service. That was in theory what would happen. It's exactly what happened with us. And then they said after that, 50 would stay. So if you did 10,000 calls, you get 1,000 people on the mailing list, 100 come, 50 stay. And but we killed that number because we had 75. We had 75 that stayed around. I'm always looking for the positive, you know that about me. But
that's right.
But looking back, we weren't ready for 75 people. We weren't even really ready for 7 people because I had no plan. I can't believe how unprepared I was. But I didn't know any better, and ignorance is bliss. So I thought what was going to happen was I was going to get up and preach, and I was going to be so compelling, you know, and people would do their part and they would listen and be changed, and then they would invite their friends and so forth. But I just thought that somehow I had no plan. Okay, we're gonna have church. I was gonna preach, and somehow I was gonna be successful. And so I didn't have a worship leader at the time, and so I did a lot of the leading of worship, which may be why the church stayed at 75 for 6 years straight. But anyway, back in the day when you do whatever you have to do to survive, and that's what I was doing. And a shout out to every church planter who has led worship, and you don't sing, and you've led worship for a season or for a Sunday. That's when that spirit of get it done overrides the value of get it done with excellence, but because you're just trying to hang in there. And we had a lot of times like that in the early days. And quite frankly, if I can be real honest right now, we're having a lot of that right now with COVID, because at our church, we've got entire departments that have been put in quarantine. You know, so you got a whole group of staff members, a whole campus, the whole band at one of the campuses was unable to. We didn't have a live worship band on stage one week at one of our campuses a few weeks back, and then I just got a text from our HR person again just a few moments ago about somebody else who's going into quarantine. And so it's just constant. So there's a little bit of that going on right now that, okay, who's the next person up? Who can we call? Who can we get to
Right.
go to bat here? So a lot of that going on even now. So still got that spirit of.
I have said that. I have said that phrase to so many guys in my coaching. I wish I was smart enough to know what I was doing. I was just trying to survive.
Yeah. And that's part of the deal. And
right.
I think, you know, and I don't know what all it takes. You know better than me because you've been doing this for a long time now and helping to coach other guys. So you've been studying and reading and thinking. But I just think, you know, that quality of just perseverance, of just keep on showing up goes a long way in church planting. And I want to speak it out loud right now, and hopefully I'll come back to it at the end if I remember. But any encouragement to church planters right now when it's tough, because I know it's tough right now, is just hang in there, man. Just hang in there, because this thing's going to be gone eventually. But back to the story, nearly 6 years in to our church planting effort, we were still at 75 people in attendance, but we actually learned some things in those first 6 years. Actually, in the second 3 years, we really learned things. First 3 years, we were basically an old church masquerading as a new church. That was 32 years ago. We didn't know anything different to do. So it was suits and ties and the piano and so forth. And then we went to Willow, which I know has become a bad word for some people, but back in the day, Willow was killing it. And Dave Dummett's there now, a friend of mine. So pray for him. He needs lots of prayers up there. But we went to Willow. Willow blew our minds. And so we came back, we made some changes, and believe it or not, it worked. And by worked, I mean, we started reaching people. Now at the same time, we started losing people. So we gained people and we lost people at about the same rate, but we were reaching people who were lost, reaching people who were far from God. And so the attendance didn't show anything in that second 3 years. You wouldn't know if you looked at a growth chart of our church's history, you would see 75 on week number 2, and then 5.5 years later, you would see 75 people. So nothing in the attendance changed whatsoever, but no growth spike whatsoever. But we were thrilled because of who we were reaching. So it was a different group in the room, which was awesome. And you know, those changes that we made. We started a band, and I started, wearing more casual clothes, and we started having food, things like that. So no astronomical, laser light show changes, just some subtle changes, and basically what everybody does nowadays. But anyway, it worked for us, which is good, or we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But we went so far as when we restarted then, the first time we started, we didn't have a core group. So when we restarted at the 6-year point, we had a core group. We had the people who were attending. And we knew that we had something that was working because of who we were reaching. So when we restarted, we changed the name of our church, we rebranded, we moved out of the strip mall where we were, we moved back into a school, and only this time around we had this core group. And before I go on, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to detour here for just a moment and tell everybody listening just how important it is that the church prevails. Because like I said, I think we're in that time right now where a lot of churches are closing. At least that's what they're telling us. I'm not seeing that personally, but it's what is out there, that a lot of churches are closing. But I want to tell you how important it is that we prevail, that the church prevails, that we succeed in what we're doing. And I want to use my son-in-law as an example. And you may have heard me tell this story before, Greg, but here is a picture. I'm going to try to share it on the screen here. Let's see, screen sharing. Okay. So there's my son-in-law and my daughter. My son-in-law is named Ty. This is back before they were married, and good guy, grew up in a home, not going to church. Mom and dad divorced. Dad, kind of an absentee father. Mom is a Muslim, and so she moved on the other side of town. So he was left with his dad that was gone a lot, to say the least. And anyway, my daughter met him, kind of fell in love with him, and but then he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer when they were dating. And before he was diagnosed, he'd come over to our house and he would eat with us, and he would have trouble swallowing his food and have some pain, but he always thought it was acid reflux because he, experienced acid reflux for as long as he could remember. And then he went to the doctor and he got that news that nobody ever wants to hear. Not only did he have cancer, but he had like a softball-sized tumor in his throat, in his esophagus, and it had already spread into his stomach. And so doctor was very adamant, said, we gotta act now. So they put him on 3 kinds of chemo. One was experimental. And after the chemo, and he lost all of his hair and all the whole 9 yards. But after the chemo, they did surgery and they removed half of his esophagus and half of his stomach. And because of that, he couldn't eat, he couldn't drink anything for weeks. And so since he and my daughter weren't married yet, and his mom and dad were kind of out of the picture, he came and he stayed with Jane and I for his recovery time from surgery. And every morning and every night for weeks, I would hook up his feeding tube. I would clean his wounds from his surgery. And then once he healed up enough, then he went through radiation for, I think it was 6 weeks of radiation. And by that time, all the hair was gone. It started falling out earlier during chemo, but it was all gone. And he lost a lot of weight. And it was a difficult, precious, emotionally draining journey for us, filled with, fasting and prayer, big time. I say fasting and prayer. During that time period, I lost 40 pounds. You know me, Greg, but I lost 40 pounds. And so, but as of January 27th, 2012, he was pronounced cancer-free, and the wedding plans were back on schedule. He didn't want to marry my daughter if he wasn't going to make it. So he waited. And but they got married in October that same year. And then this is it's all good, but here's another good part. Then about a year and a half after they got married, this happened. Little man came along, and his name is Jackson Timothy, and his middle name named after me. And this is a more recent picture of him and his family. That's when he graduated from preschool right there. But the reason I'm telling you guys this right now, two reasons actually. One is because I want to tell you, it's my family, so I like telling the story. But secondly, because Ty not only lived, he created life. So the reason I'm saying this is because there was a time in the process when this was all about him, and we were all about helping him and getting him healthy and helping him, like you and I already said, to survive, just survive. But now that we look back, there were even bigger reasons for him to make it that weren't even on our radar at that time. And I'm saying that because right now, if your church is struggling, whoever's watching this, first of all, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. But more importantly, I can tell you that the struggle that you're in is not just about your church right now. I mean, you might be focused on the few people that you've got right now, or those who are showing up, or those who are keeping in touch, and you're just thinking about making it another day. But honestly, it's not just about the people that you've got right now. It's about the people that will find life because your church survives. So every pastor I talk to now, I'm just trying to encourage them, just hang in there, man. Just hang in there. This thing is not going to last forever. But I will say this is a perfect time to get ready for whatever it is that God has next. So don't let a virus kill the dream that God has put in your heart.
That's a great story about your son-in-law and your daughter and all. Appreciate that. This whole COVID thing right now, and so who you're talking to, I know I wrote you an email ahead of time a little bit about that, but we've got guys that are in towns as small as 1,000 to Indianapolis and Houston and big major cities. So they were kind of all over the map. I didn't take tally here recently before this phone call, but I want to say right now we're probably in about 22 or 23 states. So it seems like we got a new state or a new region quite often. There's guys from West Coast to East Coast, from Montana down to the Gulf Coast, and every city of size in between. I know a lot of church plant organizations want to only plant in growing, emerging cities. We are not that. We will plant in a small town in Kansas that is not necessarily showing any great growth, but people need Jesus. So you've said a couple of things here about, because these are some markers that we use with Nexus. You said the 3-year mark. The 3-year mark seems to be a magical mark for a lot of churches. It seems when they really begin to take traction and then begin to grow. You also talked about 6 years at 75. The average, the most recent information that I've seen is that the average church in America is 89 people. So I don't know if that's like an increase, because almost everybody wants to say it's about 75 or 80, but the most recent information I've seen is 89. So maybe that's encouraging for some guys right now. But regardless, you were at 75 for a 6-year time frame. That, from the standpoint of conferences across America, that is not necessarily going to sell. Like, no one's going to put you on a stage, because that's not the sexy story, of the guy who knocked it out of the park and was running 5,000 in 18 months. When did you realize that that a change was necessary? So, like, where exactly? You said something about the 3-year mark, but then it was 3 more years.
Yeah.
So when did you really begin to realize, I've got to recalculate this thing, recalibrate, whatever adjective you want to use? What was that, Mark?
Well, I think for me, it was, 3 years into it, we changed everything. And then you add 3 more years into that when we see it actually working and what we're doing, reaching the people that we're trying to reach. And, I think most church planners, myself included, want God to use their church to reach the world. But realizing that even though it was working, we were stuck. We were stuck at the same attendance. And so I knew that we had the good news. We had gotten pretty decent at presenting the good news in our services. They were fun, relevant, gospel centered, all the things that I need to say. But it felt like we couldn't get traction. And so I'm about to mix metaphors, so forgive the traction comment. But when you want to break down a door, and I've told so many guys this, when you want to break down a door, you don't walk up to the door and put your hand on it and then push it a little bit. You don't stand there and just push it a little bit. If you want to break down a door, you back up, you gather yourself, you focus all of your energy on that door, and you run and you break through the door. And I do think that right now in this COVID season is a perfect time to begin to regather ourselves. I don't know that it's the time to break through a door right now, but I think it's the time to regather ourselves. And so, okay, sorry, another metaphor. I'm terrible at mixing metaphors here, but I've told our staff, it's sort of like for us, the train is sitting in the station right now. So let's work on the train and let's get ready for what's next. And so back in the early days, we realized that we weren't getting traction. And so we just made the decision to go for it, to do whatever it would take. And so we backed up and I preached to the church. I said, it's this kind of sink or swim moment, this kind of do or die. And we're going to restart. And I invite you to go with us. But if you go with us, you got to volunteer. No more dead weight sitting around, just consuming. We need everybody to be a contributor. And we made a lot of grand pronouncements like that. But let me be honest about something here. I was okay. A lot of people, when they hear our story, they're like, how did you hang in there for 6 years to 75 people? I didn't know any better. I'm my dad was a pastor for 50 years, and pastors pastor the people and they preach on the weekends. I was doing that, and I was content, sort of content, to just do that with whatever God supplied. I was content. And, if we still had a church of 75, I would still be preaching every weekend, working hard on my sermons, tending the flock. But there was a moment when I knew that God wanted us to do more. God wanted us to do more. He had more for us. And so it was at that moment, a little bit of holy dissatisfaction with the results, that we kind of drew a line in the sand and said, we're going to go here, we're going to restart, and we're going to rethink this, and we're going to go for it. And it really was sink or swim, because we invested all the money we had in the restart, and it worked. You are muted, brother. You're on mute.
That's right. So you have this core, and 3 years in, so did you re-identify a new core, or are you just talking that your 75 was the core?
75 was the core, and they were good folks, and I was just a bad leader. And so when I figured out how to lead and how to point to the next, to the next mountain, and get everybody headed in the same direction, that's kind of when it took off. When I got better as a leader and said, let's go do this. Because before that, I'm not saying I was a terrible leader, but I'm saying I was a preacher, and I figured out I got to lead the church too. I can't just preach sermons that I've worked very hard on. I had to add another very in there. can't just preach a sermon that I've worked very, very hard on and expect the church to take new territory. It's got to be something outside of my sermon, some goal that we set as a church that we can all strive together for, that is going to move this church forward.
So with the 75, you say, okay, this isn't working. We got to do something different. You make that claim. You're going to have to get in the game, basically, is what you told your 75. No more dead weight, I think this was the term you used.
Yeah.
And so did all 75 go with you, or did you back down to 35 or 50 or something like that?
You know how it works. If you have 75 people showing up, you probably got 100 plus people in your church.
Right.
So when we made the move over, we had signed up about 50 adults to be volunteers. So I'm going to guess that about half made the trip. You know, if you think 50 adults and then the 25 kids, I'm going to say probably half officially made the trip with us. But good news is, first week there, attendance doubled.
Okay. So let's stop there for a second. All right. So I'm going to stop, make a note about doubling. So, you and I had this conversation a long time ago, early on in my church plant. You have what you call a leadership team of 4, and you make 5. Did you call them a leadership team from day one, or did you call them an eldership? And did you run this by at the 3-year mark with those guys, or was just this you just sitting down with the guys going, here's what we're doing?
It's actually 4 of us, and I'm one of those 4.
Okay, so you're one of 4. All right.
Yeah, we are moving to 6 over the next year or so.
Okay. So
because it's too much wear and tear on the guys, so we're bumping up that number a little bit. But
okay.
Yes, pardon me. Yes, at the time, back in the day, they were on board with this. I wouldn't be able to do it without them, but they were up for whatever. I don't know, to be totally honest. I don't think they lost any sleep over anything to do with the church, so it wasn't a big deal to them. I did have one guy that was all in, man, all in. And I got to speak well of him. He's in heaven now, but no matter what the church was after, man, he was leading the charge. So
yeah, that's another thing we tell our guys quite often. Nobody eats, sleeps, and breathes this church like you do.
Yeah.
So anyway, you sat down with these 3 guys then, and you said, "Hey, we got to go this way," and they said, "Okay."
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is another. There's a 2-part answer to that. Is one, I took them to Willow. Took them to Willow. They got their minds blown. We came back and changed everything. They got to see people that we were trying to reach coming through the door. They got excited. I explained the kind of the flat line to them, and we needed to bust through this door. And so they were on board for backing up and running at the door hard.
Okay. You are surfacing a lot of things that we teach at Nexus. This could not, you and I didn't sit down and script this thing out, but this is,
No.
So one of the things that you're saying here right now, in one sense, because this is another element that we teach here at Nexus, is that I oftentimes tell guys the scariest word in church planting is the word okay.
Yeah.
Because you tell everybody, hey, we got to go this direction, and they go, okay. And so you tell these 3 guys, we got to go this direction, but then you take them to a place, you show them a vision, give them help expand that vision, and they say okay. So then you go to your church, a certain segment move on, and then you say things doubled. So how long did that doubling take?
Well, it was a real quick process for us because we were in the strip mall one Sunday, and the next Sunday we restarted in the school. So we sent out mailers, which was at that time popular. We sent out mailers, three consecutive mailers, and then we asked our people to invite their friends, which they did. And we went to the school the very next weekend and had double. We had over 150 people the very next weekend.
Okay. And so I'm going to get ahead of myself here for just 1 second, and then I'm going to let you take the route that you want to explain this. So if I remember your story right as well, you had prayed that in your church plant early on that in 10 years, you would like to be a church of 1,000. So you've gone 6 years at 75. And then what happened between year 6 and year 10? So we're at the doubling mark. What continues to happen?
And by the way, I wrote that down, that if God would bless and we would do the right thing and listen to his leading, that perhaps maybe if he deemed it appropriate, I had all kinds of outs. We could be have 1,000 people in our church in 10 years. And so 6 years, you have 75 people. Then we restarted, moved out of our location, changed our name, redid our branding. And I want to explain something about what I think is the biggest reason that it worked. I'll explain that in just a moment. Let me answer your question first. But moved into the school, doubled. Then we immediately started looking for land, because the day we got into the school was like, when you getting out? You know, they were immediately pushing on us. And so we started looking for land within a couple of months after we got into the school. And we were just going to try to buy 5 acres, just buy 5 acres. And you know how it is around here. You got to have lots for retention. And we knew that. So we figured 5 acres, we could park enough cars and have enough building space. And so we started looking, found 5 acres. It was owned by a guy in California on FM 1128, if anybody's familiar with this part of the world. And so called the guy in California, and he literally said, my wife and I are from that area, and we have been praying how we could help a church back home. And you calling us on the phone is a sign to us that God wants us to give you our property. And so they gave us their 5 acres. Well, behind the property was 17 acres owned by his brother, who wasn't quite as godly. But he sold it to us for a good deal anyway, $10,000 an acre, which was pretty much a great deal then and is a steal now.
Right.
So we ended up with 22 acres. And so we did the fundraising, which I had never done before, had the dinners and all that, and people just got excited. You got these new people coming in, and I'm standing up telling them, hey, the school's telling us we got to get out, and they're already asking me when that date's going to be. We need to get some property. And so I started pushing people, using the school, you know, and as an excuse, which was a reason actually, not an excuse. And people got on board. And so we raised money. We ended up raising commitments of $343,000, which was awesome because our budget the year before was $68,000. So all of a sudden, we have enough money to pay off the land already, you know, within the next 12 months or so, or however long the campaign was. And so we went to an architect. He drew us just a box, a square metal building box, 10,000 square feet, and going to seat 350 and have classrooms around the outside and a couple of bathrooms, and that's it. And went to the loan and through a series of God events, you know, got a loan from the bank, which was almost impossible. But I don't know if I ever told you the story, but we're at the bank and they said, you know, you don't have enough history, and the history you have is not very encouraging, you know, and so we can't loan you this money. And I said, the only way we can loan you this money is if you put $250,000 in cash on deposit in our bank for the entire time you have a loan with us. And my guys are like despondent. So we walk out of that meeting, and I went and talked to a guy that was in church that I knew had some money. And I said, will you go with us to the bank? I'm going to call a meeting with the bank. He goes, sure. So he sat down at that end of the table. There's a long conference table, 2 bankers on the other side of the table, me and my guys, plus this guy. They didn't know why he was there. My guys didn't know why he was there. And I said, so banker, tell us once again what you need from us before you'll give us this loan for our 10,000 square foot metal building. And the lady says, we need $250,000 in deposit at the bank, you know, to guarantee this loan. And this guy down at the end of the table goes, I'll do that. And all my guys went, all looking down the table at him, like, oh, that's why he's here. But anyway, he put his own money on deposit with the bank, and his own deposit with the bank, guaranteeing our loan for 11 years before we got released. But long story short, we put a building up, and so instead of, when we originally thought this, we thought we're going to buy the land. It's going to take us 3 years to pay off land. Then we're going to build a building, raise money, and that'll take us another couple of years. Then we're going to build a building. That'll take us another couple of years. So we were on this slow plan. And, but anyway, it just fast forwarded big time. And so we got that building up. We left the school. And on the first weekend in the new building, we had over 500 people. It's literally standing room only. And it's like a storybook. It's like, and a very precious, wonderful time for us. But we had an emergency leadership team meeting the night after that day. And the guys are like, what are we going to do? There's too many people here for that service. And me and my lack of faith, I told my own leadership team, it's a house of cards. It's not going to last. You just wait. Come this weekend, we'll have half that many people. Next weekend, we had more. A year later, we broke 1,000, and that was our 10th year.
Right. Yeah. So to me, this story has always been rather amazing. You go 6 years at 75, you rethink, recalibrate. You have no idea, obviously, what is about to happen. So there's 4 words that I have written down. Leadership, vision, faith, and risk.
Yeah, big time.
So here we are right now in COVID. Our whole conference this time around is about, it's kind of like your analogy about, if you're going to knock down a door, you got to step back, take a look, and then you charge the door. So we're asking all of our guys in 2021, at some point in time, we're going to have to relaunch. We've got to use 2021 as a relaunch.
I agree.
George Barna recently stated something like 1 out of 5 churches are gonna perish. And we had a Minister Alliance. We don't call it that, but we had a gathering of our own pastors here in Houston, and we had that conversation at Christmas time. Yeah. 1 out of 5 churches are probably going to perish. It's a whole different bell curve, like Dr. Fauci talks about. But I was actually visiting some of our church plants in Indianapolis. I was in the airport, and I'm fixing to board my plane, and I'm listening to overhearing this guy have a conversation. And he was a like a regional leader for a denomination, and he was on the phone. I'm waiting to board my plane. I'm hoping he gets off the phone so I can exchange phone numbers, or that my plane maybe perhaps gets delayed when I never want it to. But anyway, I never had a chance to talk to this guy or exchange information. But he was on the phone with maybe his regional district leader. Again, I don't know what denomination this was to know the hierarchy, but he was telling that guy, giving a report saying, hey, I think we're about to lose about 25 or 50 churches. And that was back in November. So, there are some churches that will be perishing, whether it's 1 in 5 and or the estimated 75,000, nobody knows. Going back to your very first statement, the church will survive and the church will press on. So we have that assurance. But as I hear your story, it's those 4 words: leadership, vision, faith, and risk. And then you said something else that I wrote off to the side of my notes here. You said a moment. Now, when we look at moments, we read Isaiah, and like, what was it, the first 39 chapters, it's all about doom and gloom. But then it's about salvation as we press on from Isaiah. You look at Luke chapter 1 and 2, and it's about the introduction of Jesus. But then in Luke chapter 3, there's this moment where the stage is set, and then all of a sudden salvation is the rest of the story of the Gospel of Luke. So moments happen, and we have to be ready to take hold of the moment. I think we're living another moment.
I agree.
So, so if there is something that you could maybe tell our guys here in COVID, if we could step back and then with leadership, vision, faith, and risk, and then taking hold of the moment, man, is there something you could maybe tell our guys about, like restorming the door after we take a step back?
Yeah, I cannot explain to you how big of an opportunity the church has right now. Now, we do have to survive for the moment, and we got to get ready for what's coming. But I don't know if you saw the New York Post article recently. Let's see if I can see it here on my computer. The title was "Sex Crazed Roaring 20s Awaits Post-Pandemic," says Yale professor. He says during epidemics, you get an increase in religiosity. People become more abstemious. They save money. They get risk averse. And we're seeing all that now, just as we have for hundreds of years during epidemics. But post-pandemic, all of the pandemic trends will be reversed. Check this out. As in the Roaring 20s, which followed the 1918 pandemic, this will plunge humanity into an era of vice and indulgence. People will relentlessly seek out social interactions, naming sexual lasciviousness and a reverse of religiosity as one of a couple of the trends. So what I'm saying right now, what I'm seeing and what I want our church to do, because our church is going to relaunch. We're going to relaunch. We're not going to restart. And that is not a change your name and location kind of deal, but we're going to relaunch in the fall. That's the target. That, the virus may move that target, but we're going to go ahead and get ready. But I would like to see churches get out ahead of the Roaring 20s that this Yale professor is predicting, and be ready when people start to wander out of their houses looking for something to do. If our churches can be ready and give people the opportunity to gather, people are going to be hungry to gather again. And I got a guy in my church that's a consultant for businesses, and we were talking about it sitting there at a birthday party one time. But he said the church is actually in a better position now, it will be going forward, than it was before, because people used to get a lot of their social interaction at work. So they would talk as much as they wanted to talk to other people, then they'd come home and chill out. He said, but now they've been in their house all day, because a lot of people are going to continue to work out of their homes even after the pandemic now, because they shut down their office areas.
Right.
Our church would be included in that. We'd kick people out of their offices. So that's going to be different for a lot of folks. So people are going to be looking for ways to interact socially with others. And so if we as a church can just be ready, like that one commercial where the guy up north, the guy comes out of his house and he's got, his jacket on and everything. And he's like a zombie wandering around, and people are cooking out. And he's like, what is happening? What is happening? And he's been in his house all winter long, and he didn't realize the sun was shining. And they're like, hey, come on, brother, it's going to be okay. That's what people are going to be like, and they're going to be looking for something to do. And I'm saying, if the church can be ready with something as simple as like a cookout, I'm just throwing something out there, but like a cookout that goes on during church, so the smoke is going up in the air all during church, and then people come out and eat, and you can invite your friends to it. I'm thinking things that simple are going to have a huge impact. And then we can grab those people, form those relationships, and move ahead stronger than we were before.
Yeah, that's a good word. I'm really proud of our guys. We had a lot of our guys get about a 2 or 3 day notice that they couldn't meet in their schools anymore. So they were kicked to the streets, and some of our guys couldn't even find a place to meet for. I think some of our guys went about 6 or 7 months without finding a place to meet because they just couldn't meet anywhere. Yet right now we have not lost the church in our Nexus network. So we're really excited for our guys. But again, that's why we're back to, hey, we got to step back, take a look, and then relaunch. And so this year is going to be a relaunch phase where we're trying to get all of our churches in on relaunching this year. So you're going to be doing an August relaunch. Is that so? Walk me through that step. Is that something that you're going to be leading the church through? Is that something that you've put all of your departments on? Is that something that you and the other three guys, your leadership team, the four of you, have said, hey, this is what we have to do? Is going to 6 on your leadership team part of that relaunch idea? Walk us through some of that.
No, we're doing various vitally important processes right now, VIP teams, and I can't remember if that's what it stands for, but very important teams, VIP teams. And so I'm on the VIP team that's working on the relaunch. There's me and like, I don't know, 8 or 9 other people. And so we're brainstorming right now. I actually have a meeting with them today, a Zoom call with them. But so we're rethinking everything, first of all. There's another VIP team working on our engagement strategy, which had grown kind of stale. We had a lot of dip between the steps we wanted people to take. So they are reworking that to make it irresistible to take the first step and the next steps and so forth. You know, what does somebody do when they get here for the first time? We just got bad at it. A first timer walking into the building, what do they do? Do they know where to go? How do we get them to take the next step? What is the next step? How do we know if they've accepted Christ? How do we urge them towards baptism and making that commitment to Christ? And what settings are we going to have for those conversations? All those kind of things. Those guys are thinking through everything. How do we get them on a team? How do we get them in a life group and so forth? And my campus pastors primarily are running that process right now that they're thinking through. I'm on the relaunch team. And so we're planning out these steps toward the fall, which may not be August, it may be September, and then it may not be September, it may be January. We don't know what the virus is going to be doing, but right now we have devotions 2 days a week that are broadcast live online. We've been doing those ever since the pandemic hit. We just went through the book of Proverbs, but that's coming to a close. Now we're going to go into prayer. The prayer is going to be for year one. You know, we're going to have that kind of introduce that verbiage to the church. You got one person that God wants you to pray for that doesn't know Christ, that's far from God, that's outside of church. And we're going to just try to start getting people to think in terms of the 99 and the 1. And then I'm going to follow this up with a series to the whole church about, you know, finding your one, praying for your one again, investing in your one relationally. And we're going to just keep after that all through the summer, so that even though COVID's going on, they can be reaching out, they can be checking on people, they can be dropping stuff by their house, they can be building that relational bridge to people who need to know Christ. And then in the fall, before we have the relaunch, I'm going to do a vision series about inviting your one. See how all this works together, right? So then inviting your one, and then we're going to relaunch. And when we relaunch, we're going to have a sermon series. It's going to be, you know, like a relationship series or something that a lot of people prefer, you know,
right,
over the book of Hebrews. And I don't, but a lot of people do. So we'll do something like that people can invite their friends to. And on top of the series, then we're going to have fun stuff, whether it's a barbecue, you know me, Greg, we've done things like alligators in the lobby, things like that. Hey, bring your friends next week, going to be alligators in the lobby, see you there. And people walk out going, what is happening? And they come back and there's alligators. People, you know, walk up, they hand you an alligator and you get your picture taken and just things like that. But I'm telling you, every time we do something like that, attendance just goes through the roof. And then hopefully they come in, they hear the word, they've connected with their friend who brought them relationally. They can do the follow-up on that friend and bring it back again. So that's what we're hoping. And then hopefully at that time, our engagement pathway will be irresistibly smooth, and those people will jump in and the church will excel.
So yeah, you said another key word now. So there's a lot of things that I teach our guys and harp on our guys. There's one that Phil, our director, teaches our guys and harps on our guys. And we actually call it a landmine. And you just said the word next step. So one of the key elements for you is to make sure that people who are walking in your doors always know what the next step is.
Mhm.
Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more about that, or what that team is doing right now as they're in the step back stage looking to kick down the door? Can you, maybe you've said all that you can say right now, but can you elaborate a little bit more on what the next step is for those people?
Yeah. Well, I'll I'll tell you how it isn't working well at our church right now. Um, right now, you walk into any one of our campuses, there's a room that looks like an Apple store with a wood floor, big wood table, iPads sitting all around, monitors on the walls. Looks real hip, but it's called Connections, and nobody knows what it is. Okay. So it's got the big letters Connections. And during the service, the person who does announcements will say, if you want to sign up for this, or if you want to be a part of this, or you want to volunteer for this, go to Connections. But there's not a place for someone who's brand new. So when a brand new person walks in the door, they don't know what Connections is. They haven't been in the service yet to hear that that's where you might need to sign up for stuff. So what we're doing now is we're moving it toward having some kind of kiosk or something that says, is this your first time? You know, come here and we will help you. We'll help you sign your kids in. We will answer the question. Yes, you can take your coffee into the auditorium, you know, but we don't have a place like that right now. And so that was one of the key things that people noticed was missing, is just the start of the process. We don't even have a good start for our process, which is amazing to me because I don't pay attention. I've been going to church for a long time, so I'm hoping somebody else is working on that. But you know, looking at it now, I'm like, we got to do better at this. So that first step, you would then get some people's information. You would try to move them to the next step, which would be like a Discover New Hope gathering, whether it be a pizza gathering or something, and answering questions and then presenting the gospel and telling people why we baptize folks at our church and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, kind of laid back, but intending to move people down the field a little bit more, which would then lead to, we need you, you know, another setting would be, we need you to serve. So if you haven't made that decision yet, and we're beginning to track all of this on our database now, where we have, you know, the badges that, you know, somebody was baptized, somebody is on a Teams, you know, somebody giving, you know, so forth. So you can kind of see where they are and what next step they need to take, which honestly, with technology now, then you can shoot an email to those people who've done everything but that one thing, whatever it is. You can shoot them an email that says, hey, we're having a get together. We're going to be talking about this. And it just so happens to be the thing that they need to do. So that's where we're headed, and we're not quite there yet. We're still stand up at the front of the room and say, go to Connections, no matter what.
Right. All right. Good. And so so one more time, if I heard you right, you're going to relaunch officially from your perspective with the month of August.
Well, maybe September. I think what's going to happen is, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like school is going to be make or break. You know what I mean? If schools open up in full force and the vaccine has hit 50% of the people or 60% or whatever, we're talking about a different landscape than we are right now, when only 1 million people or whatever it is have been vaccinated, or 10 million, I don't know how many, but not very many people have been vaccinated. So.
Right. One more thought before we close up here. This is not necessarily relevant to our guys, but I think in another sense it is relevant to our guys, because here in the Houston area, you have, is it 3 or 4 campuses?
We have 4.
Yeah, 4. Okay, so but your 4 campuses are you also cross county lines, and you have different cities. So so you've had to navigate different county mandates and different city mandates for your different 4 campuses. So
Right.
It's kind of like an old book by Gary McIntosh, one size doesn't fit all. So what you do at the Pearland campus doesn't necessarily translate to the Alvin campus that you have, or
Right.
any other campus that you have. So can you maybe just talk briefly on the diligence of keeping up with city mandates, county mandates, and just navigating some of those perils?
Well, when we had to shut down, we shut down 2 different times. And when I say shut down, we didn't have in-person services. And one of the reasons that happened was because one of our campuses is in Harris County. So it's in Webster, but Harris County dips down and gets it, you know. So there were all kinds of rules that made it almost impossible to have a service in Harris County there for just a little while. So, you know, when it came to that point, we closed them all down for a period of time. But we've always, even to this day, we have the mask requirement. We tell people to wear a mask into the building. We do allow them to take them off once they're seated, but they're supposed to wear them when they're up walking around. Even our band members wear masks if they're not singing, you know. So we try to comply. And I've told everybody that, because you know, you got people on both sides of this issue that don't think you should have church no matter what, and nobody needs to wear a mask, and forget everybody. And then you got people on the other end of the spectrum that are saying that we are breaking the law by some lady in the church who took her mask off, you know, during the sermon, you know, and they're mad about that. So
we are, so for everybody who's watching, you and I are separated by maybe a 40-minute drive, but maybe as a crow flies, maybe 30 miles really distance between us. But my church is way more redneck. So nobody wears a mask in my church, but we have a mask zone upstairs in our loft area that people can watch and go up there and wear a mask. And so we've got people up there these days wearing a mask and watching the service from up there, and we're still doing the online. So I guess one of the things here again is, you know, do whatever we can possibly do, whatever is legal within your area and mandated within your area. We don't want to, I guess what I'm hearing you say too is, you know, like, we don't want to intentionally break laws, obviously, right? We are the church representing the body of Christ.
I mean, we're pretty blessed here in Texas, though, because if it was California, we might be singing a different tune.
Yeah.
A little bit, you know.
Right. All right. Well, man, we are nearing our 1 hour mark. Is there anything else that you want to say to our guys?
I really feel like, and you've been with me in some of our Houston area pastors gatherings. I just want to encourage, man. When I get up in front of my church nowadays, you know, I want to teach the Bible and all that, but at the end of the day, I just really want to encourage people to hang in there. And I know that pastors feel it, and I walk away from church every Sunday with only 36%. We haven't really broken 36% of the previous year's attendance yet. Haven't done it yet. And I go home every week and I start to get a little bit down, but then I catch myself and I say, you know what? I'm blessed to be able to do what I do. People are still, you know, watching online and stuff. And so be encouraged. And so I put that encouragement on my face every Sunday, and I preach like there's a zillion people in the room. And I tell people that I love them every week. I didn't do that before, but every week now I tell our people that I love them and care about them, and they're, you know, God's going to get us through this. And so to pastors, I would say, hang in there and be encouraged, because God is not done with you yet. He's not done with your church. The world needs what you have. And so even though it feels weird and we're in this stinking weird time right now, I would just say, dream big and share the vision often, and, you know, challenge people to get on board, continue to challenge people to give and to serve, and then, you know, at the right time to invite folks. And I would say use this time that we have right now, which is sort of a gift from God, this time that we have right now, to focus all of your strength and your energy and the vision of the church in the direction of the Great Commission, and hitting it hard in the fall or whatever, you know, it opens up in your area. And then when that time comes, man, break through the door, break it down for Jesus.
All right. Well, let me close this in prayer, Tim, and appreciate your time with us. And then we will hand it over to Andrew, or maybe we're going to go live. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing. So, Father in heaven, you are a great, mighty, and awesome God. I just pray for all of our guys. I'm so proud of our guys for already hanging in there. Lord, we ask that you would bless them immensely for this year. We ask that you would bless them as they step back and relaunch. We ask many blessings upon Tim and his family, and for all of what they have endured medically over the recent years. We pray for his church as well, and the success of his campuses and the pastors who are leading those campuses and his overall team. Father, we ask that we would be diligent in what we do, that we would remain in those 4 words of leadership, vision, faith, and risk, and that we would make the most of all of the moments that you present to us, Father. So we pray again for faithfulness and for courage. We pray all of this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Tim, I really appreciate your time with us, and it's just good to have you around and willing to jump in and help our guys.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right.